Welcome back to another episode of The Real Deal. Today is the 62nd anniversary of the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Now, I'll give you a little refresher here. It was in Dallas, Texas. 3 shots came from the Texas School Book Depository from the 6th floor. 1 shot hit him and magically went through him and into Governor Connolly, who was riding up front. And Lee Harvey Oswald was the man they said shot him. And then later on, Lee Harvey Oswald shot a Dallas police officer. And then they caught him in a theater. And he was assassinated in a couple days after that by Jack Ruby, a nightclub owner, who shot him because he didn't want Jackie Kennedy to have to testify against him and put her all through that stuff. So there's the story, people. Lee Harvey Oswald did it. JFK was assassinated. There was no conspiracy. None whatsoever. Okay, I'm kidding. Are you crazy, man? Okay, today I'm just going to talk about the Kennedy family. A lot of people have John F. Kennedy on a pedestal. He was a great man. He did all these wonderful things. He didn't. People, the guy did a lot of very bad, negative things. Where do I begin? He has a history of fabricating things. He comes from money. They never had to struggle. His father, Joe Kennedy Sr., he made a ton of money back in the day as a stockbroker, and he came from money too. And he did a bunch of stockbroker work. He worked with a lot of, he had a lot of what you call mobster connections, or they call them mafia connections. And he worked in a lot of industries where they would bring stuff in on a ship, and it would be like whiskey or booze from another country, and so they would sell it, and it was basically coming in illegally. It wasn't coming through your major ports or anything. There were no taxes being paid on it, no tariffs. And he made a ton of money off that. So, the Kennedys never went without. And during the Depression, when most people, the working man, was struggling in America, the people knew about the Kennedys because they were always pretty proud and bragging and things like that. And they'd have the biggest houses and everything else. They resented the Kennedys. People couldn't stand them. And they were too full of themselves, and a lot of people didn't like that. And I understand that, And they didn't do anything for charity. They didn't help out the poor or anything like that. They had their big swimming pools and their parties and everything else. Meanwhile, people are standing in bread lines right down the road, So I can understand the resentment. Now, Joe Kennedy Sr., again, he was actually named as the head of the Security and Exchange Commission, the SEC. He was the first person to be the commissioner of that, and he was also ambassador to Great Britain during the beginning of World War II. He had a lot of anger. He had a lot of racism. He wasn't very good to minorities. He definitely was not good to the Jews. He was very anti-Jew, anti-Semitic, call it what you want. He did not have anything for them. He felt America shouldn't even go to war. They should stay home and not worry about England or anything, even though this guy's the ambassador over there. So he went over there, and eventually he resigned. And one thing he said was, because he wasn't forced to resign, but I think deep down they said, look, you need to go, man. So step down, which he did. But they made it look good, And he said that democracy was dead in Britain, and it would probably be soon dead in America. And that was like 1940, 41, around in there. When the war was going on in Britain, he said Britain won't be able to survive against Germany. They shouldn't go to the war. They should just give up. He supported Hitler. Because he had the same idea as Hitler had with the Jews. He didn't like the Jews. He didn't want them here. He was an Irish guy, and he hated the Jews. He resented them, probably because maybe some of them made more money than him. Probably because he couldn't hustle the money from them. Who knows? He just had a lot of racist overtones. And that was passed down to the family. Don't let them fool you that these people were glorious and stuff. John F. Kennedy did a lot of bad things, but I'll get there in a minute. So his dad, though, he supported the Nazis. He invested and lent them money. He invested in Nazi Germany during the war, knowing what they did, knowing that they had concentration camps, death camps going on. He still invested in them. And actually, there was one point where they got investigated. This company he was going into, it's an investment firm, basically, and they got busted because it was about halfway through the war. They're like, wait a minute, why are you guys supporting the enemy? They didn't like that too well. So they got shut down and got in a lot of trouble for that. Oh, plus there was a rumor way back in the day. Now, this really hasn't been proven. It hasn't been proven right or wrong. It's like a contradictory story. It could be true. He could have had something to do with it, but Kennedy he was involved in the bootlegging system during Prohibition. There's a possibility of that because, like I said, he would import all this shipment of like Scotch whiskey and make a huge profit off it. And he wasn't doing it the legal way. He did a lot of things like that. So the Kennedys were actually kind of an elitist family. They weren't down to earth. They weren't working class heroes. You know, they weren't like the rest of the average Americans. Like I said, they came from money. They were born into a political family. They had political connections. And Joe Sr. wanted his boy, Joe Jr., to be the president. And, I mean, this was being set up. They were working on this. He wanted him to be president or something else someday. He worked with a lot of people. I mean, he had a lot of clout in the stock and the commodity markets. He had a lot of real estate. He had a ton of privately controlled businesses across the United States. He was worth millions, and in today's money, probably billions. And then he became good friends with Franklin D. Roosevelt when he was the Assistant Secretary of the Navy. And I think that was in the 20s. And, you know, they started making huge profits together. I mean, FDR didn't come from the poor either. He wasn't a working class hero either. FDR, to me, was one of the worst presidents this country ever had. The closest thing we ever had to a king. Kennedy was all over the place. He was investing in Hollywood. He was investing in the radio industries. He was investing in building in Hollywood studios. He had his hands in everything, and he was trying to get his people out there, you know, his family involved in a lot of things. And like I said, he had a lot of organized crime. For a better word, everybody calls it the mafia. He had a lot of mafia connections. He did a lot of business with them in Illinois, mainly in Chicago. He owned a place there. I believe it was called the Merchandise Mart. Big store, big place, and the mafia had a hand in it. You know, they protected him. He protected them. He paid them off, you know. They worked together. And that was going on for a long, long time. Joe Jr. died in World War II. So Pops was a little upset about that. So he had to pick a new person to be the number one son and try to get into politics. And that was JFK, John F. Kennedy. John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Anyway, I don't know if y'all heard of the PT-109 story where he's a hero on the boat and everything like that. They made movies about it. They built him up and the media declared him a hero. But the funny thing is, he never denied any of that stuff happened. But everybody that was on that boat with him said he didn't do any of that. It was all lies. He wasn't a hero. He was just another guy. But his dad had the clout. When you're making a movie and you own the studio, you know, I mean, that's how it goes. Hey, let's make a movie about what happened on the PT-109. Oh, okay, let's do that. And your son's going to be the hero in it. And, you know, that's pretty sad, but it is what it is. So Joe Sr. was trying to push JFK around and get him popular and get him in with society and everything else, and trying to get him into politics. Now, John F. Kennedy was like his dad, and he had a history of, like, running around on women and stuff. If you're single, hey, whatever, man. But see, a lot of people don't know this, because he married Jackie Bouvier later on down the road here. But before that, and you won't hear about this, but it's the truth, and they try to make it go away because it made him look bad. Dad took over when he found out he got everything done, made him look bad. So it was in 1947. There was a huge party in Palm Beach, Florida. Kennedy got drunk. This socialite named Dury Malcolm. They eloped. They took off after the party. They eloped, and they got married. And Joe P., Pops there, he stopped that marriage quickly. He made the records disappear because he said it was going to make him look bad. Because once the public find out he was married, and it wasn't like a major event, you know what I mean? They ran off, got married by some priest or something, and it makes them look bad. They have to have this big fancy wedding and stuff like that. So there was a lot of people that knew about it, but the records disappeared. Certain people still know about it today, like me and a few others that actually look into this stuff, because a lot of these families are corrupt and do a lot of bad stuff. Now, do you think it's bad that he married this chick? I don't think it's bad. But when you're trying to make this guy a politician and you're trying to push him to be a senator or a congressman or better yet, a president, I mean, they're paying these people on the way. And it still happens today. Don't let them fool you. You got all these politicians out there. How many come from a poor family? They all have connections. And that's how Kennedy got to where he was, because of his connections. So after the war, after they made the movie, showed how a great person he was, it's fiction. Anyway, he was elected, Kennedy, JFK. He had he represented in Boston it was a district he was in the U.S. House for 6 years. So he was in the House of Representatives. And then, he had all this, like I said, this was all being done. They were pulling the strings for him. They always did. And he became a senator, and he was the junior senator from Massachusetts for 7 years. He didn't do much in there. He wrote a book, and for some reason it won a Pulitzer Prize. I don't know why. But he didn't do anything. He just voted party lines. Didn't sponsor anything, showed up, made a lot of money for somebody just making not that much money a year. Well, it's good money, but became a millionaire like nothing. His family was already millionaires. So, he was your basic politician. Just did what he had to do. So then in 1960, he said he was going to run for president. He was like, Mom, my daddy wants me to be president. Mom, vote for me and we'll give you money. And he talked a good game, but it's all talk. Now, in 1960, he was running against Richard Milhouse Nixon. In 1960, it was the first United States televised debate. It was the first time they ever had that. It was, new thing. TV wasn't a big thing like it is now. Everybody's got a TV. Back then, if you had a TV, you were rich. I mean, back like in the 40s, there were no TVs basically. Hardly anyone had anything. It was all radio. So this was the first televised debate. Now, Richard Nixon went there, and he was really, really sick. Now, he had been vice president under Eisenhower, and he'd done a really good job. And Eisenhower was a good person to be serving because Eisenhower did a lot of good positive things, and he told the truth. And later on down the road, Nixon got in some trouble, but Nixon did tell the truth, and that's why they don't like him. So Kennedy goes up against him in this debate. Nixon was really, really sick. Didn't feel good at all. Looked awful. Swollen face, and they told him, let's not do this. And he said, nope, I got to do this. We can't back out. It makes us look like cowards. He didn't do good in the debate. And then you got Kennedy in there, who's, a good-looking guy with his suit and looking good with makeup on and all. And Nixon struggled. And it basically became a popularity contest. Who's cuter? And people, they vote party lines and stuff. But it was basically come down to who the better-looking person was, really, seriously. You ask people back then, they'll tell you. And Nixon would have been a better politician, but especially during those times with what went on. But so JFK ran against him, and he won. He won in the narrowest election ever. Barely won the election. Now, Daddy pulled some strings. And you all see these movies. You ever see these movies where, or even TV shows, or even on The Simpsons, where they talk about dead people rising up to vote? That's where this started from. Because they started investigating things. Because Kennedy was like, pretty cocky guy. And he got in there, and Nixon and all the people were like, this doesn't seem right to me. They started looking at some of these numbers, and they didn't add up because there were more people voting than there were registered voters in the state. The state of Illinois is what put him in there. And they started looking into it and found out all these dead people had voted for Kennedy. And that was your mafia, your organized crime pulling strings for him because Daddy paid them to. So that's how he won. He cheated. And that's typical Kennedy stuff. Now, when he got in there, right away, he started having problem with Cuba because there was a lot going on in Cuba. Castro had taken over. Batista was gone. And here's another thing. Now, when Batista was there were casinos down there. The mafia had a lot of powerful connections down in Cuba. Believe it or not, the mafia has a lot of power, or they did. I don't know. I think if they have it now, it's low-key, and it's probably more enterprise things like check cashing places and owning banks and things like that. You never know. But back then, it was casinos and a lot of clout, and there were tons of casinos down in Cuba. So Batista, he took over. He won. Batista lost. Castro took over. Now, and Castro didn't like America. He was a communist. Batista had deals with America. He had deals with the mafia. He had people coming down there all the time. And he started cracking down. No casinos, no gambling, not while I'm here. So those guys all had to leave. So they leaned on the Kennedys and said, hey, man, you got to help us out. So they did. So they pulled some strings. They did some things. And, I know you all heard about the Bay of Pigs and stuff like that. But there were a lot of tensions there. And Kennedy authorized on several times he authorized many attempts to overthrow Cuba and the Cuban government of Castro. You had the Bay of Pigs invasion, which everybody knows about. Kennedy dropped the ball on that one. A lot of people died. He didn't give the air support that he said he was going to. And nobody really knows why. Might have forgot, might have been busy with some person while he's cheating on his wife, which he did a lot. And there was also Operation Mongoose. Operation Mongoose was a big thing. And, that's a whole story in itself. That was going to take another long time to explain it. But they were trying to take over Cuba, and he authorized that. Operation Northwoods was another one. That one didn't go off because there was stuff going on because Russia started sticking up for Cuba. And so Operation Northwoods, what Northwoods was going to be was a false flag operation. They were going to have people die in America. They were going to kill them. They were going to pretend that Cubans were killing people, holding them hostage and doing all this bad stuff. They were going to have Cubans that were here that were sticking up for America. They would have them doing this because who's going to see them? Who's going to know about it? It's going to be in the middle of the night, one of those things. It's going to be you'll never know. But it was going to be a false flag, and they were going to blame the Cubans, and that way we could go and invade Cuba. No problem. Because the House and Senate wasn't going to let it happen. but Kennedy wanted to do it. Kennedy also started the Vietnam War. Now, you'll hear the rumor about, like, that, well, he was killed because he was going to end the Vietnam War. No, that's fake. That's from a movie, man. Most people get their history from movies or books or social media. No, you can research this stuff. It's 1,000% true because I'm the real deal with it, and that's all I tell is the truth. But Kennedy went through there, and he started. Vietnam, there was a lot of tensions. He started sending all these so-called, quote-unquote, advisors to Vietnam. That's a nice word for troops. And they were training the Vietnamese over there. And the war was going to be escalated. And there's a video where he says, like, it's their war. They need to worry about it. And they stop it right there. And everybody says, see, he said it's their war. Keep playing the video. He'll be like, and we're going to go over there, and we're going to do this, and we're going to send people in. Play the whole video, people, and you'll hear the truth about Kennedy and the Vietnam War. The Russians sent a bunch of ships with weapons into Cuba. And America didn't like that, so that became the Cuban Missile Crisis. My problem is, why is it okay for America to put missiles all over the world and military bases in other places, but nobody can have a military base here? Did you know there's no foreign military bases here in the United States, but we've got them all over the world? Did you know we got missiles right now pointing at Russia and Poland, but Russia can't put anything in Cuba? They were going there to protect Cuba from America. And I kind of understand that because of everything that was going on. There were all kinds of threats. There was all kinds of crazy missions going on. A lot of people going in there, killing people, trying to take over, trying to kill Castro. Do you know how many assassination attempts were on Castro? Somehow he survived them all those years. And so a lot of stuff was going on. And so in East Germany, they put up the Berlin Wall. So Kennedy went over there and he delivered his famous speech, and everybody's probably heard it. I'm sorry, it was West Berlin. West Berlin was German. East Berlin was communist. But the Berlin Wall separated them. He's in West Berlin. He's like, Ich bin Berliner, which means basically I'm a donut. You know, he's trying to say he's from Berlin. He was one of them. No, he wasn't one of them. He was a big phony. Now, let's go back a little further before he became president. He was 12 years older than Jackie Bouvier when he married her. Jackie came from money too. She came from a ton of money. She didn't work hard her life. She married Kennedy, and it was basically for show, you know, to make him look good and stuff. I feel bad for Jackie, all the things he did to her. Kennedy was 36 when he married Jackie, who was 24. It's technically a Guy Code violation. Those of you guys out there that know the Guy Code, you know I'm right. But, you know, So, he was cheating on her from day one. Always. Always, man. And it's proven. I mean, people came out and admitted it. These women admitted it. They weren't ashamed of it. They were trying to get him, hey, man, why don't you leave her for me? I can't do that. I'm president. I got to look good. And that's what it was. He has to look good. The night of his inauguration, when he won, he left. This is a true story, people. He left, came back later, and the story goes, and I believe this story, that he had gone out and met Angie Dickinson and celebrated his inauguration with her. He comes back. Jackie was panicking, like, you know, he was gone for maybe half hour. And she's like, where have you been? He's like, I went out to get a newspaper so we can remember this forever. And it's like, really, dude? Really? Here's the thing. I'm sure he had the newspaper. What if he came back and didn't have the newspaper? So, where's the paper? Whoops. I mean, he had so many affairs with people. He had an affair with this girl, and this is while he was president. Now, we're not talking about the ones before Jackie, you know, like when he first got married and was in the Senate. But he had an affair with a girl. She was 20 years old. Her name was Diane, and I'm probably not saying the name right. It's Devegh, Devegh, or something like that. She talked about it. 1958. He was 40 some years old, I think, about 40. He would always say there was something special about her. And she even said it. She came out and said, yeah, well, this is a romantic story, I mean, he had an affair with Judith Exner. Okay, so Judy was basically Sam Giancana's, that was one of his women. He was a mafia don. And she claimed she had an abortion because she was pregnant with Kennedy's kid. So I'm sure they made her do that, which is weird because they're Catholic, but I'm sure she got a lot of money or something for that. But what does that tell you, man? And we all know about his affair with Marilyn Monroe. I mean, everybody knows about that. And the funny thing is, Marilyn Monroe met a nasty end. Did you know the last person she was seen with before she died was Bobby Kennedy, who later on down the road in 68 would be murdered also. Bobby Kennedy was just like his brother. Anyway, so everybody knows about the Marilyn Monroe affair. Everybody knows about that. Remember when she sang Happy Birthday? And it's like his wife did not like that. Jackie didn't like that at all. But I mean, she was all over him all the time. Everybody knew about it. And then she met a nasty end. And I still say she was killed. They found her, she was overdosed. The girl didn't do drugs. She didn't do any needle drugs. They killed her. They killed her to keep her mouth shut because she knew too much. We all know that. Another woman that he used to cheat with was, she was her I think she was, not a sister. Hold up. Sister-in-law. Sometimes I get it going here and all my brains just sister-in-law of a Washington Post editor. Her name was Mary Pinchot Meyer. And Kennedy was cheating with her for years. She wrote about it in her diary. They even found letters. There was letters online. I think it was about 10 years ago. They had a letter that he wrote to her. It was at an online auction in Boston. I don't know how much it went for, but it was like talking about murdered, talking about their affair and stuff. Now, here's the funny thing. She was murdered in Georgetown, and they still don't know what happened. Now, why was she murdered? She was murdered in October 1964. You think that was just a coincidence? He dated a chick named Mimi Alford, like Bill Clinton, all over the interns. In 1962, they had an 18-month affair, and she wrote about it in her book. She's probably gone now. I don't know if she's still around, but she wrote about it. She said that, he wasn't looking for a relationship to replace his marriage. She wanted a relationship, and she talked all about it. Jill Cowan was another one. Jill Cowan was a secretary in the White House. She was a secretary in the press office, and she was always with him. If he went overseas, she was there. She did say that he was fascinated with youth, which sounds kind of disturbing. She never really wrote or talked about it, but she did say that he was fascinated with youth and younger women. And she was a lot younger than him. But, that's... People, this is the President of the United States. He's cheating on his wife the whole time. I could go on and on. There were tons of staff members that worked with him. Another one was, what was her name? Priscilla Ware. I can't remember if it's W-A-R-E, W-E-R. She was another one who worked in the White House. And supposedly, Jackie was aware of some of this stuff because he was cheating with this other girl who was a press aide. He was basically, I've got to be blunt here, he was screwing anybody and everybody. He didn't care. He was above the law. It's like, she even said one time about Ware chick, Jackie Kennedy said to a reporter, "This is the girl who supposedly is sleeping with my husband." It's all real, people. It's all true. And there are tons more. I could go on and on about this, like Marlene Dietrich. She was, I believe, an actress or something, and one time she was getting an award, And it was like Kennedy asked her if he had time, or she had time, and she's like, well, there's 2,000 Jews about to give me a plaque at 7, and it's 6:30 now. He goes, that doesn't give us much time. And they had sex, and he fell asleep. And she's like, it was sweet, but it was unremarkable. So good for her. But these are the kind of people that we have as presidents a lot of times. He was not a saint. People glorify him. And like I said, you'll get your history from the movie JFK. That's a faction movie. A majority of that is fiction, people. JFK was not a hero. He was not a saint. He was not a great man. The economy wasn't booming or anything. There wasn't a lot going on. The Civil Rights Act was not passed. He did not do a lot of good for the country. And people say, well, he was only in there 3 years. Well, here's the thing, too. When they went down to Dallas, the only reason they had LBJ as vice president was because they needed that Dixiecrat vote. Because the Southern boys don't like East Coast boys down there. They don't like Massachusetts boys. They don't like New York, New Jersey boys. They like good old boys. If someone was from Oklahoma, Montana, yeah, you're all right. Washington State, nope. But you know what? Missouri, that's not too bad. The Dixiecrats are like that. And it's still kind of like that today. The good old boys they know who they like. So they had LBJ be vice president. And that's why they were down in Texas. Because the polls were close. He was not way ahead. There were a lot of people dissatisfied with him. They knew about some of the stuff he was doing. They knew he was sending the troops over there to Vietnam. They didn't want another war. They were not happy with him. So he went down to Dallas to try to rally Texas and stuff. And like I said, he wasn't ahead in the polls. This was going to be a very close election. A lot of people speculate he probably would have lost. But he went down there. He was assassinated. And I'm going to talk to you about that another day. There was more than one person. Lee Harvey Oswald didn't do it. And we will never know who pulled those triggers. Now, I've been down there. I've investigated it. I've been to New Orleans for the connections. I've investigated all of this stuff. I've done every angle, everything. So I don't praise JFK. Yes, it's sad he was murdered. I don't like to see that kind of stuff. But you don't know who had him murdered. He had a lot of enemies. He did a lot of bad things to a lot of people. I feel that there were people very closely connected to Marilyn Monroe that blamed for her death. They blamed him. They blamed the Kennedys. And a lot of these guys with some money and clout, whether they're mafia or just a regular guy that's just in the stock market or something, they got clout. They got money. They got connections. So they pulled some strings and had him offed. And they didn't feel bad about it. A lot of Americans did not feel bad about it. A lot of people didn't like Kennedy. So there you go, people. JFK was assassinated today, 62 years ago. And I'm going to come back and talk to you in another podcast. And we're going to go over the assassination. We're going to go all over it. And it's going to blow your minds, people. Because there's a lot you don't know. There's a lot they don't want you to know. And there's a lot of things they try to hide and they won't tell you. But I will, because I'm the real deal. Peace.